Okay, we now have the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Um, so my history with this is I always thought that the 70, I believe 78 version was the original. Little did I know, I was like, oh no, this is actually one from the 50s. Oh, whoops. So I was familiar with the whole like body snatchers type stuff, um from like when they did the remake in the 2000s with I think it was Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig, to like something like The Faculty, where that's pretty much body snatchers in like high school. And so I was kind of aware of the whole thing, but I saw the 70s version like years ago, and then I didn't watch this one until fairly recently. Um and I'm glad I did, because this one was pretty good. This one was pretty good. So, if you don't know, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it's the whole like, alien pods come down, and they're able to um impersonate and uh basically shapeshift into somebody, and yeah, then they just go around and act like that one person, but they're not. And so this was the start of that whole thing, and it still holds up pretty well, actually, especially with it being like in the 50 56. And so yeah, and because something I was going into this thinking was it kind of like, something like a lot of the stuff from the 50s, like it not really holding up very well, like it being a little bit slow. There was really nothing entirely slow about this one. I mean, it's an hour and 20 minutes, but it it goes a certain way, but then once stuff starts happening, it just keeps going and going and going, and it's just rapid, and it's like, wow, this really really works. Um, I like how this one has kind of like a Lovecraft feel to it, where if you don't aren't really familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, a lot of his stories deal with, like, the beginning of it. It's a lot of retelling the events of certain things, and then to the end, it then gets to the um like, well shit kind of ending. And this kind of does something similar, where it's like, the beginning, it's, the main character, saying like, yeah, like, I'm not crazy, but like, this stuff is going on, and then is retelling what he just experienced over the past, like, like, couple, like, week or something like that. I think it was like something like that. And so it was, and then when you get to the end, it's just a big, like, uh-oh, well, what's gonna happen next? Who knows? So it gives you that, like, fill in the blank yourself kind of feel. And I actually quite enjoyed that, and I like how they did that. And something else I think is kind of cool is if you go and watch the 70s one, and the beginning of the movie, there's a guy running around, like, saying like, oh, this is, like save yourself and all this kind of stuff. It's the same guy. It's Kevin McCarthy, who was the main character in this. And I didn't realize that until I talked with, I believe it was my dad about it, and he was like, "Yeah, it's the same guy." And I was like, "What? It's the same guy?" So, because I didn't see this one before, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." So it doesn't really feel like a remake; it almost feels like a continuation. So that's kind of cool. Um, the I'll say the only kind of complaint I have, but it is, again, very nitpicky, is when um the pods are, I actually like the fact they look like, almost like little, like flowers before they bloom, like they're like in like little cocoons and stuff, or like mainly cocoons. And I was like, that's kind of cool. That's a cool little thing there. But it's, you see the process of how, these pods and spit out these doppelgangers, and it's kind of like a, okay, all right. And it's like, all right, so they have kind of bubbles around them like soap, and I'm sure it was soap. But that's being incredibly nitpicky, because you gotta think of the time period and the fact that this is something where it's like, yeah, no one thought to do this at the time. No one else really thought about this. I mean, the only other movie I can really think of that was supposed to be kind of like this, but it's not, is The Thing from Another World, because that story, it was like a, um, questioning everybody kind of thing, like don't trust anyone. And so, but then that one kind of took it out the window, but that's a different one altogether. So this one, um, I liked the mystery that it was setting up. I also liked how it was a small town and how like everybody knew each other. So the second that someone seemed off, it was very noticeable, because everybody was like, like it felt very Twilight Zone, like the monsters are due on Maple Street, where that story, it starts out with, everybody, the whole cul-de-sac, the whole neighborhood like knows each other. The whole suburbs know each other. Like you didn't have to lock your doors. Everybody knew each other. Everyone was polite and nice. And then the second that this little thing gets dropped in, it then devolves into paranoia. Where, with this, it's like, okay, this is fully out there, and you don't know whether to tell people or like keep it to yourself and just try to keep going. And you just don't know what to do. You don't know if to like get out of Dodge, because you don't know who is who anymore. And so that I really like that idea, and I think this does it very well. Um yeah, I some of the things in here like caught me kind of not off guard, but I was like, "Oh, that's clever." Like uh they take a fingerprint of one of them, and it's all blank. There's no like, like when you look on your fingers, um you have like the swirls and everything. It was all just blank. And it was kind of like oh, that's kind of cool. Like it's like starting to um uh, uh transpire. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool like little detail. And another thing is, towards the end of the movie, like you're seeing like the whole like kind of like town square, and just like, everybody's just kind of like continuing it on. Like they even say like it looks like a typical like Saturday morning. And then when like a town meeting starts, like everyone just kind of drops everything and then just slowly goes into the center of town. But there's no like siren, there's no call or anything. They just know. And it's like, okay, that's very eerie, and that's kind of cool. I like that. So I was very impressed with this one. I thought it wasn't going to be like as good as the 70s one, but the 70s one goes like, okay, we're going to take this and improve upon it. We have better technology than we did 20 years prior, so let's do that, but not make it a reboot, not make it a remake, kind of make it like a secret sequel. And it works. It works pretty well. And so we wouldn't have all that like, that the body snatcher type stuff that we get in horror movies if it really wasn't for this one. So that alone, this is I would say a very high grade. Not quite amazing, but a very high grade. Like it's almost like teetering over into amazing. And yeah, it begs the question, like, what would you do in this situation? It's like, even the people like closest to you, like you've known your whole life, And that's just a very, very sad, very scary thing to think about. And, I always think about, like they can't reach the Navy. And I always think of SpongeBob, like the robots have taken over the Navy. And I just think that's just so funny how SpongeBob does a lot of those horror stuff, like the old stuff from back in the day, like this and previous day as Nosferatu. So very, very well done.